Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Our life always expresses the result of our dominant thoughts. Listen to the cry of the woman in labor at the hour of giving birth, look at the dying man's struggle at his last extremity, and then tell me whether something that begins and ends thus could be intended for enjoyment. Marriage brings one into fatal connection with custom and tradition, and traditions and customs are like the wind and weather, altogether incalculable. The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays. The truth is a snare, you cannot have it, without being caught. You cannot have the truth in such a way that you catch it, but only in such a way that it catches you. The paradox is really the pathos of intellectual life, and just as only great souls are exposed to passions, it is only the great thinker who is exposed to what I call paradoxes, which are nothing else than grandiose thoughts in embryo. During the first period of a man's life, the greatest danger is not to take the risk. A man who is a physical being is always turned toward the outside, thinking that his happiness lies outside him, finally turns inward and discovers that the source is within him. The more a man can forget, the greater the number of metamorphoses which his life can undergo, the more he can remember, the more divine his life becomes. During the first period of a man's life, the greatest danger is not to take the risk. Far from idleness being the root of all evil, it is rather the only true good. People commonly travel the world over to see rivers and mountains, new stars, garish birds, freak fish, grotesque breeds of human. They fall into an animal stupor that gapes at existence, and they think they have seen something. Trouble is the common denominator of living. It is the great equalizer. It was completely fruitless to quarrel with the world, whereas the quarrel with oneself was occasionally fruitful and always, she had to admit, interesting. Like individuals, have their histories and are just as incapable of withstanding the ravages of time as are individuals. But in and through all this they retain a kind of homesickness for the scenes of their childhood. I begin with the principle that all men are bores. Surely no one will prove himself so great a bore as to contradict me in this. I feel as if I were a piece in a game of chess, when my opponent says of it, that piece cannot be moved. Not just in commerce but in the world of ideas too, our age is putting on a veritable clearance sale. Everything can be had so dirt cheap that one begins to wonder whether in the end anyone will want to make a bid. Because of its tremendous solemnity, death is the light in which great passions, both good and bad, become transparent, no longer limited by outward appearances,